Okay, let's start. So I am Ann. My website is A Farm Girl in the Making. Our farm is Acorn Creek Farmstead. We are in Waynesboro, Tennessee. Does anybody know where Waynesboro is? Okay, yay, there you go. So Waynesboro is about an hour from here. It's this little itty bitty town in Tennessee. It's very private, secluded. You have to really know Waynesboro, and there's a bug on me. You have to really know Waynesboro in order to understand the beauty of Waynesboro. It is in the middle of nowhere. We farm on 42 acres. We have 32 on one side, and then across the little countryside freeway, we own 10 acres there that we can't work because it's on a hauler. Unless I get in there with a lot of dirt work, I'm not able to use it, but it's a beautiful piece of property, so we keep it. Then on top of that, it prevents anybody from building in front of us. So that's the other main reason, okay? So, go ahead, Jess. So, like I said, A Farm Girl in the Making is an international website that teaches individuals all the way around the world with our courses and all that stuff. And then from here, we turn around and we teach hands-on. I think learning for this lifestyle is more important on the hands-on aspect of it, because then you get to see and feel and touch and do things. So if you're ever in the neighborhood, we have an Airbnb you could stay at. You can turn around and do something like this. Okay, so let's get into the knit and grit. There's a mentality switch, right, when you first start homesteading. At first, you start this garden, and you're successful, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got a garden, this is great, what am I gonna do with it? Oh, I'm gonna can it. Okay, perfect, go ahead and can it and preserve it. And then you're gonna come to a point where you're like, I have 32 jars of green beans that nobody will eat. Okay, so then we have to make that switch. Do you become a consumer or producer? There is a big switch in this. Okay, when you're going from consumer to producer, it will break you, it will exhaust you, and it will show you that you have now gained an independence that most people in this country do not have. Okay, you're a consumer, you're buying from the supermarkets, Azure standards, fast food, and restaurants. Now, if you're buying from Azure standards, you know you're getting a little bit better product, but you're paying a killer price for this product, right? But at the end of the day, unless you're growing your own flour or your own sugar, you're gonna need to do that, okay? So making that switch is a little bit different. So you can't fully drop the consumer market unless you're doing this all independent yourself. And I can promise you you're not, because I'm not. And I raise 100% of my own meat, and I preserve 80% of my own food, okay? What I don't preserve is flour, sugar, right? I use honey that I buy from somebody else because I can't catch a swarm to save my life. So with that said, this switch is hard for a lot of people. Do I eat out? Yes, on occasion. There are times where my children for their birthdays want to go to a restaurant, and I will eat out, but I also have 2 autoimmunes. So eating out is very difficult for me. I will suffer from that at that point, okay? Growing and raising your food to become a producer, supporting local farmers, okay? Preserving the harvest, and barter and trade. I think for some people, supporting local farmers and bartering and trade is the hardest thing for us to do, because bartering and trading means I'm not able to do this. And I'm gonna talk from my husband's standpoint. I'm not able to do this. I do not want someone to know that I can't do this. I'm gonna now do this on my own so we don't have to do this anymore. And as I tell him every single day, you don't have the time to do all this, period. So if you are not stepping back into a world of bartering and trading, you're failing yourself and your property, period. I barter and trade every single day because I cannot do it all. I can't, and I know that. I trade food, I trade equipment time, I trade skill for all of this. So get into this, make this comfortable for you, because in truth, if you don't, again, you're failing yourself. You are failing yourself. Support local farmers. Support them. If you are not able to raise your own hogs at this moment in time, you're gonna get a cleaner food product because there's no mRNA vaccination in these hogs at this point. mRNA stepped into the hog market about 1.5 years ago. Does everybody know what the mRNA vaccination is? Yes. It is basically if you are vaccinated, it's okay. I don't have anything against you, okay? It basically is in the COVID vaccination. Now they're bringing it over into our food system, okay? So hogs, if you're buying pork at the market, that's what it is. You can buy a hog from me, whether or not you wanna buy a feeder hog, if you want me to raise it up and buy a half or a whole, you're consuming a cleaner food source from a small family farm that doesn't do it to raise money, but does it to compensate the feed costs, so she's gotta feed herself at the same time. Okay, you want to barter me for a feeder hog, 2 of them to put on your property? You come see me and I will gladly barter you for something. And then preserving the harvest is essential, okay? I moved to Tennessee last year. I've only been here 1 year and 5 months now, okay? In that 1 year and 5 months, I had this much of a garden, okay? My garden is 7,000 square foot. That was my dream, to have this 7,000 square foot garden. I've got 1 inch of topsoil, I've got clay, and I've got chert. Who knows what chert is? Okay. Chert is this, for those that don't know, is like this rock, this limestone rock that's dropped in a crumble, and you cannot get underneath chert. So the only way that I can actually grow food is to do a no-till garden, okay? That means that I'm building up soil on top of it to grow food. So now my garden is 7,000 square feet, and I'm only maximizing 10% of my garden because it takes a long time to build up that area. So grow and raise your own food, or partner with another homestead that is a little bit more successful and say, you know what, I'm growing peppers really, really well. Can you grow me some corn? That's how it works. This is how you step back into a traditional life, because all of you guys are sitting here because you want more of independence. You got to find your friends, man. If you don't find your friends, you're cutting and selling yourself short. Find your friends that you can partner with and go there, okay? So understand the importance of what this is. It's essential to your life, okay? All right, traditional food preservation methods. These are practiced worldwide, yet foreign to Americans. Fermentation, curing meat, and cold storage. If you step out of America, these are what they do. I taught a canning course at the Homesteaders of America, Homesteaders of America, I told you I'm still loopy. Homesteaders of America conference. She came all the way from Australia. They don't even sell pressure canners in Australia. They don't can food there. They use traditional methods of fermentation, curing, and cold storage, and that is it. So when we launched this, it was so much easier. It was easier to put everything in a jar and store it, right? Because you hear those stories. My great-grandma, about 60 years ago, still has pig feed in a jar, and that's what I'm going to open up and eat and things like that, right? But why? Why are we doing that? Why is canning your first sense of food preservation? Did you know that if you have a pressure canner and we end up going off-grid, that you have to know what wood is on your property and outside your property that's going to burn the hottest and the longest? Not all wood is equal. Right? I can burn alder wood in Seattle, which is a hard wood, but it doesn't produce enough heat to run my pressure canner. So if you guys still want a pressure canner if it goes off grid, you better know what wood you have on there, how high the temperature burns on it, and then on top of it, how long it's going to burn that you need to replenish it. Most people don't even know how to do that. Okay? So know what wood is growing on your property. What is the best hardwood if you continue on to pressure canning if it ends up going off grid? Fermentation, curing, and cold storage. Okay, Jess. Okay, so that's a duplicate. Let's go ahead and step out of that one. Okay, so the newest method of food preservation. If I hear one more person go, I need a freeze dryer. I have a freeze dryer. I love my freeze dryer. But, right, it costs money to run a freeze dryer, like a lot of money to run on your electricity, number one. And if you have a oil-operated freeze dryer, you're paying money to continue to do that. If you want to do a gasless one, you have to pay $1,500 to swap over your system to have something like this. Does this do its job and do great magic with it? Absolutely. It stores food up to 10, 15, 20 years. But if you're the type of person that goes, oh, I didn't set my alarm, guess what? For it to be done, you've got to freeze dry it again. You've got to be on top of a freeze dryer to get it done. And in truth, it's great for certain things. Like these are eggs. My husband loves powdered milk. So these are eggs, powdered milk. So if you're freeze drying for sustainability in case something happens to you, right, that's great. I'm sorry to the people who freeze dry candy, but I'm going to tell you right now, that's not why you should be here. If you're going to use a freeze dryer, don't do candy, okay? There's a market for it. I get it, but stop freeze drying it. Stop trying to give it to me. I'm not going to eat it. And so it's great. It's fun, but do utilize this for what you're going to use. These run anywhere from $3,000 up to $6,000. It's an investment, huge investment. So make sure you understand. I was told to ask everybody to please scoot into an empty chair so other people can sit. Is that possible? I know it's hot in a tent, but there's a lot of people that are hanging out. So if you people want to come sit, come on in. Or get out of the shade and sit in the aisles. That's what we need to do. Okay, so as you're shifting, I'm going to keep talking real quick, okay? Freeze drying, guys, great investment if you're going to use it. My freeze dryer has sat now for 1 year and 5 months. Yeah. Yes. Life has been very busy for us, so I miss it, but I don't miss it enough to really make it a priority for me. So if you're going to invest in that, do it. Great. Store the items that you're going to keep. You're going to keep eggs. right? You're going to keep milk. You're going to keep maybe some vegetables. But honestly, when you put vegetables and freeze dry them, guess what happens? They crush on you, and you get a powder form. That's it. So think about this. Was it a good investment for me personally? No, because I choose other methods of food preservation. So Tiffany has sat, and I may plug her back in at some point, but right now I choose everything else on top of that. Okay. I'm going to talk really quick about growing and raising your own food, okay? If you are not raising food intentionally, you're wasting your time, okay? If you're planting yourself 600 beans and you're only going to eat 100 of those beans, stop doing it. If you want to preserve tomatoes, like pizza sauce, tomato sauce, make stewed tomatoes, choose the right tomato, okay? Let me explain that to you. So if you grow slicing tomatoes, they're beautiful, they're good, they're delicious, and cherry tomatoes, but they're full of water. When you grow meat tomatoes like plums, Roma, Samaranzos, Italian paste, or whatever that is, Amish paste, they are a meatier tomato, less water content, and they actually give you bigger bang for your buck. You're going to be cooking this beautiful slicing tomato down for a couple hours to compensate for a plum tomato. It's only going to take you an hour. When you grow food, especially in your garden, think intentionally. Stop growing lima beans if you're not going to eat lima beans because your neighbor grew lima beans. Don't do it. Stop growing those scarlet runner beans because the red flower is absolutely stunning, but you're not going to can the bean itself. Here's the thing about gardening. Here's the thing about living an intentional life. I live an intentional life. And if you follow me on social media, you know that I live very intentionally. I don't have the time to waste my resources if I'm going to feed my family. Okay? Enjoy your process of gardening, but think about what you're going to plant. You don't need 500 tomato plants. That's going to take you 500 hours to can. You're going to want to grow more Samaranzos, more of those plum tomatoes, because you can get 25 to 30 pounds in one plant if you pick a determinate plant that's going to give you your yield at one time. At one time. Whereas this, you got to keep freezing, you got to keep saving until you have enough to do it, and then you're going to put it in a roaster, and it's going to take you 2 hours to do that, and then you're going to try to blend it down, and then all of a sudden you put it in a jar and you have this much tomato and the rest of it is water. That is unintentional. Don't raise hogs if you don't want to work them to do your land or put them in your freezer. Don't do it. You can get a little coon that's going to eat your grass in your pasture and help you out, but your meat process is going to give you the palm of your hand for a pork chop. If pork chop matters for you, you need to raise real hogs. I'm sorry if anybody raises coons or small lard hogs. I apologize. But intentionally, if you want to sell your hogs, right, and compensate for your cost for what you're feeding your sow, you need to have a product that is going to produce for you, okay? All right, let's go back. Intentional. Think intentionally. I sit down at the beginning of every year in December, for the following year, and plan how I'm going to preserve my harvest going forward to feed myself for that following year. When I buy my seeds, I'm very intentional on my seeds. I rarely put something new into my seed order unless I know it's going to give me something back in return. That is intentional living. Okay, mindset on how to do it. Okay, so you notice, okay, I know you guys can't see, so let me read it for you. Fermentation, drying food, cold storage, curing your own meat, and canning. Canning is my last resort. My last resort, okay? Fermentation is my first resort. Why is that? Anybody know? Less work, healthy. I don't know who said healthy. What? Yes. Anything else? Quick and easy and tastes good. 70% of your immune system runs through your gut. 70%. If your gut is not healthy, your government owns your health care. Period. Period. If you want to stop control of what your government is giving you, you've got to take care of your body. And by taking care of your body, you got to do what? You got to consume probiotics, prebiotics, and that is found in fermented foods and fermented beverages. Someone just gave me a beautiful homemade bottle of wine, and I'm like, oh, well, you made it yourself. Well, I'm going to drink that. I don't even drink wine, but if someone gave me a homemade bottle of one or mead or whatever the case is, I will consume that, okay? Fermentation. And I know it's hard for some people because they're like, no, I'm not going to eat it. But let me just flat out tell you, you can make fermentation to your own taste. You can pull the ferment a day or two early, because at that point, what happens? You're accustoming your body to the taste, right? Sauerkraut is the easiest thing to make. Someone said it's easy to make. Shred up that cabbage, put 3% salt in it, sit it on your counter for 3 days, make sure it's underwater the whole entire time, and you get to consume it. Or learn how to brew kombucha, right? Feed your gut, or you are owned by your government, period. I am on gabapentin right now. I'm on oxycodone right now. I am on this high dose of ibuprofen and something else. Oh, and an infection medicine. So once I get off of this, I will feed my gut every day by eating fermented foods or drinking kombucha. Every time you take an antibiotic, it destroys your gut flora. When it destroys your gut flora, you got to build your gut flora back up. And if you don't build your gut flora back up, you're delayed by almost 3 months. Important to understand fermentation. Essential to your health care. Drying foods, if you walk into my house, this year, I've done it every single year, I have this hook that runs across my ceiling. All my herbs hang there every single year. My sage, my oregano, my thyme, anything that I need to dry, my plantain, whatever it is that I need to dry is hung there. When my children were little, they're like, Mom, it's like a witch's cottage in here. And because I got everything hanging there, my garlic is in there after I'm done as well too, even braided onion, whatever the case is that drying foods was essential. People were sun drying meat. And guess what? In Asia, in South America, and in Africa, guess what they do? They sun dry meat to this day. To this day. They don't can food, okay? Cold storage is essential too. You got all your root vegetables, you got your winter squashes in there, anything like that, but you don't have a root cellar. What do? You find the north-facing part of your house. You get a couple of bins that are air that can breathe. You shove it underneath your bed, and you hope you don't got no rodents in there. Okay, so if you don't have a cold storage unit or a root cellar, it can still be stored. We didn't have it. We put it in our garage, which is north-facing in Washington State, and I got lockers. I built shelves on my lockers that was able to breathe, and I stored all of my winter food. Butternut squash, essential. You can roast it. You can make soup out of it. You can do all that stuff. So all that winter squashes, you should be growing. Acorn squash. Spaghetti squash doesn't store as long, so we always eat that first, right? You need to know what stores the longest in order to move forward to consume it for the rest of the winter. Okay, this is where your mind shift comes from consumer to producer. What can I keep that's going to last the longest? You've got to make that shift. If you don't make that shift, guess what? Again, your government owns you. I'm sorry, I am very anti. And I don't hide it. If I offend you, I apologize in a way, but not really, okay? So, with that said, I am a straight talker. I don't sugarcoat anything, and it does offend people at times, but I believe that our drive right now is to get away from being underneath the thumb of an organization that wants to control you. Heck, it's food. Why? Why do they need to do that? Because whoever owns the food source owns the people. That is it. Amen? There we go. Curing food. You can cure fish. You can cure meat, but you have to know how to do it. And the way you do it is you're cutting it thin, you're cutting it in strips, or you're cutting whatever, you're leaving it to sun dry. You're making sure that it's completely dried before you consume it. You can freeze dry it after that. You can put it in a dehydrator. Wherever that is, it's curing your food source. You can put herbs in a dehydrator as well too, but what we want to do is we want to teach ourselves how to not use electricity as much as possible, okay? That is your goal. Think back traditionally, back to those days where people, I get hit all the time. You didn't weigh your salt for your ferments. Guess what? I grew up in Asia. Guess what we didn't do? We don't weigh our salt for our ferments. We mix it, we taste it, and we know what our percentage is. If it's too salty, man, I'm at 5%, okay? If it's not salty enough and I only taste a hint of it, I'm less than 3%. So this is where we need to go back to. It is your passion and your drive to do this. Educate yourself on how to do this. I cannot tell you enough. Okay, next one, canning. We'll get to that. Okay, Jess. Okay, fermentation, right? You are in spring. Let's think seasonally. So now our lives are about how to do this in a game plan. I do everything in quarters. Quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. okay? So when I plan my year, that's how I think. You need to shift into that mindset. Quarter one, what can I do to preserve? Quarter two, what am I going to do to preserve? Quarter three, because that's going to keep you organized. Number one, organization in this life is key. You know, all those women that were out saying, okay, we're going to eat from here, and this is what we're doing, and the men are like, well, we got to harvest and do this, and the women are like, no, this is how we have to do it. I'm not dogging men on anything like this, but I'm telling you that if you plan your quarters, you will be independent, and you will eat more of your yield. Does that make sense? Quarterly, eat your yield. So fermentation really occurs during the spring and the fall. You can ferment pickled items, right? But a lot of us like that leafy green ferment because leafy greens do not store quite as well. You have an option of dehydrating and making them into a powder so you can add it to like pasta, homemade pasta. We take beet greens, we take spinach, we take whatever we want and we dehydrate it and we add it to our flour when we make pasta so we have that hint of flavor in that. So that's a great way to use your leafy greens. The only other way to use leafy greens is to freeze it. It takes 30 pounds of one leafy green to fill a pressure canner, and I know there's very few people in here that can harvest 30 pounds of leafy greens at one time. I can't. So my option then is to go ahead and ferment it, dry it, freeze it, put it in my cold storage, right, which I can hang in a refrigerator unit. With cold storage right now for most of us is refrigerators, right? Put it in your crisper drawer. It'll keep for a little bit. Yeah, it's good, great, but then it starts wilting and you're like, oh, I got to feed it to the pigs now. I should have just did that earlier because I know that's what's going to happen, right? So then after that, you can can it, but again, 30 pounds of leafy greens. Come on, friends. If you're really growing 30 pounds of leafy greens, raise your hand. All right, and our life is about being honest with each other, right? We've got to be honest with ourselves. So then your first process is really fermenting it, making it into a kraut. I did cabbage, mustard greens, shredded carrots, green onions, and then I put a little bit of serrano peppers, and I did cayenne pepper, and that was my ferment, okay? I could have used anything. Mustard greens. Janelle gave me some mustard greens. I can use the tops of beets, whatever the case is, so there's a zero waste. You can can your beets all you want, but you're going to use your greens. You're going to eat them, saute them with garlic, or you can ferment them. Zero waste, okay? Next thing, summertime, we're going to ferment again. We're going to pickle our items. We can dry our goods, right? You can put your berries in the dehydrator or whatever the case is. You can freeze it. You can cure that at that point. When we talk about curing at that part, we're talking about your meat, right? We're gonna put some of our meat in the freezer. You can cure it, your hams, whatever you're gonna get from your hogs and stuff like that. And then canning again is last, okay? So then back into fall when our garden is, again, we're gonna ferment back again. But these ferments, now when you ferment something, you can go up to a 20% ferment and it's gonna hold it, but it's gonna be really salty to the point where you're gonna have to rinse it off before you eat it. That's how they really got by with traveling back. You know, back in the days of refrigeration, they would actually ferment their goods at a 20%, rinse it off, and eat it at that point. A 3% is not going to hold for a year. Let's be honest. It's not. Okay? So fall, you're going to ferment your goods, drying, cold storage, curing, freezing, and canning. Now, here's the deal. Leaving here, show of hands, who's going to actually go home and start fermenting? Oh, well, hey, love you people, but I love the honest people even more. Okay, so fermentation is a scary process for so many. It is. And the reason why is because your government told you it was scary. Your government took away fermentation. And they said, okay, it's not necessary for you. I've got a supermarket for you. Let me give you fresh foods from that supermarket. Fermentation is actually a lost art. Think about it like that. It's a lost art. And it's an art that needs to be reclaimed by Americans. It is already reclaimed in Europe. It's already reclaimed in Asia. It's already reclaimed in Africa. And it's already reclaimed in South America. For God's sake, why did Americans just throw that underneath the bus? So your first choice, and I'm going to look at you because you made eye contact with me. Your first choice is to learn this skill, and it starts small. You don't have to go out and get this 20-gallon crocks. You can put ferments in a half pint, okay? In a half pint. Start slow. Let it ferment. Generally, 3 days ferment for leafy greens are beautiful. You may pull it at a 2-day ferment, so you can accustom yourself to consuming it. Justin will take kombucha and brew it for 10 days. You know what a 10-day kombucha brew does? Turns to vinegar, and it is so strong, but he loves a 10-day ferment. So I do a 7-day ferment for me and my kids, and then Justin has his private little refrigerator stash of a 10-day ferment, because it tastes like vinegar. I'm not even going to lie, but that's how he likes his ferments. Okay, go. Sorry, Jess, I didn't mean to say go like that. Okay. Jessica is one of my assistants. She does all my web work, and I adore her, and her son is running around somewhere. I don't know where it is, and I adore him too. So anyways, 70% of your immune system runs through that. You can lacto-ferment. You've got your krauts, your kimchis, and your pickles, okay? So if you've ever had a fermented pickle, oh, girl, let me just tell you to start there. If you are growing pickles, get those little pickling cubes. You can slice them. You can put them whole. Grab a couple head of garlic, a little bit of dill. Put your 3% brine in there and let it go to town. That's how I got my kids to eat ferments. I started with fermented pickles. Not a full ferment at first. A good 3-day. Now I'm at a 5-day for them. They don't know that, though. Okay? So then on top of that, your fermented beverages. Guys, if you can't eat fermented foods, for God's sake, step into the beverage aspect of it. I'm not talking homemade wine or beer. I'm talking about something like this. Kombucha, you can do water and milk kefir, which milk kefir I don't like, but if you put it in a smoothie and make it into a smoothie, it's better to digest. And one of my other assistants, which I don't know where she is, she uses milk kefir to make ricotta. She mixes it in with her ricotta. It's called the farmer's ricotta. And so she mixes it in there, and then she makes raviolis with it. Guess what I'm doing as soon as I get home? I'm going to get my milk kefir started. I've got milk now going, and that's where I'm going to go. And, of course, then you got the fun stuff, right? Then you got your meat and your beer, okay? Get a kombucha starter. If you don't know where to get a kombucha starter from, go to Etsy. Google kombucha starter. You can buy one. They'll give you 1 cup of starter. I'm going to tell you, if you've never made it yourself, it's different from store-bought. It's milder in taste. Pull it at 5 days. Start drinking it at that. The next time, pull it at 6 days. Drink that, and then go to a 7-day after that. And then learn how to do a second ferment, which is better than the plain kombucha. A second ferment will give you carbonation. It will give you fruit flavors. Our favorite at home is pineapple ginger, and it's got carbonation in it. I'm going to tell you, own your food source. Okay, cultured butter. Who knows how to make cultured butter? I love you. I love you. I love you. I love the people. So cultured butter, you know with that Kerrygold that you can buy at the market, you can actually get a Kerrygold cultured butter, and it's expensive. It's like $10. $10 for a little block. And I'm like, just make your butter, leave it on your counter 3 days, and then you've got a cultured butter, right? I don't cook my cultured butter. I save that for like bagels or toast or whatever after that, because once you cook your culture, it's done. It dies. So I have a separate fermented. Do you need some water, honey? You're so tired. Are you hot? Oh, okay. I thought you were falling asleep. I'm not making fun of you, but I really was going to give you a thing of water if you needed it. Okay. He's just hot. It's hot in here, you guys. So anyways, your cultured butter is better. Keep it cultured, keep it ferment, and go from there, okay? And then you make your butter after that. So then honey fermented garlic. Has anybody had honey fermented garlic? Okay. So you know now that honey is a preservant. Okay, a preservant. You can put anything in honey, and it actually ferments it. The longer you keep it in honey, the better fermented it is. So what happens is if you put fresh garlic in a jar with honey covering all of it, and after a couple of days, the honey starts to really liquefy, right? It's no longer thick. You take that honey at that point, and you can do one of 2 things from it. You can use it for a salad dressing, or as you get ill, you can actually take spoonfuls of it. The honey is no longer spicy, but it's actually very tasty in flavor. I take the garlic as well, too, and I'll mush it, and I'll add it to pasta after I've cooked my pasta and my sauce, and I'll just top it with that. So there are plenty of ways for you to do that. So honey ferments are fun, and they're delicious. Honey fermented fruit, oh my gosh, if you never did honey fermented fruit, that's like syrup. Like if you eat maple syrup or syrup for your pancakes, that's what that tastes like on top of that. It's a little watery, but it's still really good. Sourdough, who's already doing the magic roll of sourdough? There we go. Okay, so we know that sourdough feeds our gut, right? And I will tell you, I hated making sourdough. And the reason why is because I learned the hard way. Weigh your flour, weigh your water, weigh your starter, and then you're going to get this beautiful artisan loaf that you can actually design to make all these flours for. And the pressure was unbearable for me. And I hated it. I hated the process. I didn't want to do it anymore, so I stopped sourdough for many years. Then I ran into a friend who actually teaches my sourdough workshop. You want to know how she does sourdough? Starter, a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, and stirs it. No measuring. You learn the consistency that sourdough starter should look like pancake batter. And then the magic happens. The bubble starts. Guess who got back into making sourdough? Me. Because I didn't have to weigh it, and I now know, you know what? I don't have time for you. I put it in the fridge. I let it go into hibernation. Then I wake it up, and I start it again. So sourdough is so easy for those who aren't doing it. Get yourself a starter, learn the consistency, bake when you're gonna bake with it, and then put it in the refrigerator when your life gets too stinking busy. You may get a little hooch on it, which is the little black stuff, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, my sourdough starter molded, but it didn't, it just went to sleep. You pour off the black hooch, you feed it again. It may take 2 or 3 days to wake it up, but that's okay. It is awake, and it is good, and you're guaranteed to have it. Okay, switch over to the next one, please. And you can actually, it contains less gluten, just so you know, and it's better for your digestive system if you're gonna eat it, okay? And those who have diabetes, it is actually one of the breads that actually regulates the blood sugar as well, too. So it's not magic, but it's easier for people with diabetics, who are diabetic. Okay, wild yeast. So wild yeast, who knows what wild yeast is? Okay, so if you don't have, gosh, it is really hot in here. If you don't have, let's just say, if you don't have a starter, so ferments start with a starter, okay? We're talking a lot about fermentation because that's essential to our life. If you don't have a starter, you can capture what we call wild yeast. It's in your air. It's in your air naturally. It's gonna take longer for you to ferment something. It could take something longer for you if you're gonna capture your own sourdough starter, because you can do that. But it is great if you save some of your starter from your pickled items to jumpstart your next ferment. But if you have to capture it, most kimchis are made through the wild yeast that can be found in the air, right? And that's how we do. I never take this kimchi juice into the next one. I just allow nature to do nature on that one. If I'm pickling something, I will save it because I like to jumpstart it because that could take a little bit longer, okay? So here's the other thing. Who knows the rule about having multiple starters in your kitchen? Starters will cross-breed with each other and destroy each other. If you have a kombucha starter, if you have a kefir starter, if you have a ferment starter, if you have a sourdough starter, once it hits the air, guess what happens? It collides and it kills itself. So you have to have your starters 4 to 5 feet from each other, which is kind of crazy because I have a kombucha starter here, I have a sourdough starter here, I have ferments 4 feet over here, but you cannot keep them. Like, I love people who pose all of their ferments together, and I'm sitting here praying, I'm like, please tell me you're gonna move them after you took that picture. Because I have done that and people have hit me hard. You can't keep your starters that close. I'm like, I know. I just wanna show you what I have. That's it, okay? But make sure cross-contamination doesn't happen. All your starters going forward need 4 to 5 feet away from each other. Yes, yes, yes. You cannot put your pickled next to your sourdough, and you cannot put it next to your kombucha. Pickled items together, safe to go. Okay, safe to go, okay? Drying foods, air drying, herbs, vegetables, fruit, fish, and meat, okay? Let's get into that. I don't know what time it is, but if anybody's got to leave, I understand. Okay, so basically you're going to air dry, you're going to sun dry, dehydrate, or oven dry. Oven dry is going to kill you, right? You're putting heat into your kitchen. You're raising your air conditioning. Your air conditioning cost is going to go up this roof to do this, right? Because it's a long, drawn process. If your oven doesn't drop below 170 degrees, it's not even worth trying. Okay, because you're going to crisp your food, okay? So then if you turn around to air drying, it is great. It is great because you can air dry underneath your canopy of your house, and then it's hanging there as long as it's protected from the sun and the weather elements. I've hung garlic underneath my porch. I've hung onions up there because no elements can get into it, okay? Sun drying. Here's the thing about sun drying. You need the right temperature, you need sun, and you need to make sure that you have at least 10 days of no rain. Okay, minimum of 10 days. So now with that said, Tennessee is a great place for that, right? But when I lived in Washington State, oh goodness, no, sun drying was not an option for us because it would rain here and there on the drop of a dime. It didn't even matter, and it was crazy and it was dumb. Dehydrator, I have an Excalibur dehydrator. The type of dehydrator matters, okay? So if you have a top fan dehydrator, guess what you're doing? You're rotating trays because the heat of the dehydrator isn't hitting evenly. Same thing with a bottom fan. So if you're gonna go buy a dehydrator, get a rear-facing dehydrator that dries evenly so you're not spending your time rotating trays and drying longer than necessary. There's a difference between the foods that are coming out. You're gonna have leather, you're gonna have crispy and crunchy, right? So apples, for example, if you slice them thin enough, are nice, crispy, and crunchy, right? But if you do prunes, for example, if you've got a plum tree and you're putting in, it's going to be leathery, pliable, right? So you have to understand that they're not going to dry to your consistency. They're going to be like a raisin texture, right? And on top of that, if you put herbs in there and you over dry them, guess what happens? You remove all the beneficial items from them, and then all of a sudden your taste of your herbs are like really yucky. I was going to say another word, but yucky. So with that said, you have to understand these processes of moving forward, okay? Oven drying, again, you guys, it's not worth your effort at all. Learn how to harvest your goods and succession plant what you have. So all this refers to succession planting, right? Everybody goes, oh, I think I'm going to get those cucumbers to grow a little bit bigger, so I'm going to leave them a little bit longer. I'm going to tell you, you're not investing in your property if that's the case. Harvest your yield, plant and pull another product or pull the same thing for another season, and then maximize your growth from there. Learn how to pull your goods outside of your season so your food source continues through the whole entire growing season. When I first started, I was like, no, I'm not ready to pull that yet. It can give me a couple more. And then I missed the next boat. I missed the next boat to say, okay, I could have then planted another round of something else and got a better yield. So this lifestyle, all this food preservation depends on you and your strength to manage your garden. If you don't have the strength to manage your garden, you're going to miss all this. You're only going to get a little bit of food preservation. I only gardened in a lot that was probably 4 of these stages in Seattle. I produced almost 80% of my produce reserve because succession planting was essential for me to get to where I was at. Okay? So if you're not succession planting, you're not. You need to plan your garden in December to know when you're going to pull, how you're going to pull, and what you're going to plant next. Get it ready to go. Okay, so go ahead with the next slide. So the image did not appear. Okay, moisture will cause spoilage. Okay, you're going to ruin what you have. So if you're drying something and you're in a hurry and you think it's done and you're going to try to bag it, you're going to get mold in there. Okay, and the other thing that you need to remember with that is that if you put food in a jar, you still need an oxygen absorber to help absorb that, and you're still going to need to vacuum seal that jar. So if you want oregano, because your oregano harvest was killer. It came in and you were like, it is good to go. I'm good for the next 2 years. Good. I'm going to tell you this. Go ahead and put it in your jar, put an oxygen absorber in there, and go ahead and get a vacuum seal lid. Suck that air out so you can keep that for 2 years. They make a pump one. They make one that attaches to your vacuum sealer. They make one that just plugs into the wall. But if you're not preserving your food right, you're going to lose it in a couple months. Okay? For example, if you're going to reduce the moisture in fish and meat, you need proper air circulation, right? Because this is going to be kind of like sun drying. Then on top of that, you're going to need to salt it and cure it to store it, right? And then from there, the sun, it's a minimum of 8 to 12 hours per day, depending on what's being dried. You can pull it inside at night so the rodents or the critters don't get it, but then you're going to put it back out until it's done again, okay? So then from there, it's a long-term storage because you will smoke it after that. So if you want to do sun drying for jerky, right, because you don't have a smoke room or whatever the case is, you can do this method and you can still preserve it, but it still needs to be dried to do that final curing, okay? That's when you can either throw it in your oven or you can throw it in your dehydrator after that, okay? So do I cure a lot of jerky? I don't, but my assistant Christina does a lot of beer jerky. We don't hunt yet, so we have a beautiful space on our property that we can, but everything else has taken precedence on that. So think about that in being a great method of food preservation. You probably will not step into meat in this method, but the problem is that if you don't learn this skill and you need this skill, you're screwed to not having this skill. Okay, next page. Okay. Air drying herbs, garlic, onions, and flowers. If you are not, here's another thing. We grow flowers in our garden, right? Because it draws pollinators, it makes us happy. But why not grow flowers that are very herbal in a sense that can help you? Calendula, do you know what calendula is? It's a beautiful flower. It reseeds itself like crazy. It's going to grow all over your garden. But calendula is great for burns. Right? Calendula is great for just any form of healing, and it actually can be used on your livestock as well, okay? You can give rabbits, your meat rabbits, calendula, and it's beneficial and healthy for them as well, too. So calendula is a plant that you should be growing all the time and preserving all the time. Echinacea, another one to grow and add on that one, right? And then any other one that you want to grow that causes the pollination to come, but it's intentional. It is intentional. I grow bee balm, but bee balm is intentional, too. Right? So think about when you do your gardens, when you do that. You're going to dry small batches. People have a problem. They're like, my herbs molded. And then they send me a picture. the bunch is this big, right? They thought, oh, I had such a great harvest, I'm just gonna bunch it like this big, and then I'm gonna air dry it, but there's mold in there. Your bunches for drying herbs should only be this big. You have to have air circulation in order to allow them to dry properly. When is it done? Once the leaves are crispy. I always touch one leaf. When that leaf is crispy, it's done. If you have run out of air drying space, grab some brown paper bags and throw them in there. They'll dry in brown paper bags as well, too. So I used to have brown paper bags all over the place. I used to air dry. I had my dehydrator going, but I had herbs for years. Years. I didn't buy anything from the market. You grow paprika, you make paprika powder. You grow cayenne peppers, you can use that for your ferments. Do you see what I'm saying? So everything you put in your garden should be intentional to this lifestyle. So do not over dry bunches. Keep them small. And then from there, for long-term storage, herbs and flowers, vacuum seal them in a jar with an oxygen absorber. Make sure that you, okay, I love you people so much, but stop washing your garlic to dry it. Tell you, you're going to pull your garlic out of the ground, you're going to layer it up, you're going to hang dry it with the dirt on it. Once it is fully dry, you're going to take your hand, you're just going to brush off that loose dirt, right? You don't want to wash it. It will delay this drying time, and it can shorten the time that it's able to be preserved. So just once it's dried and once it's cured, I just take my hand and I just brush off the dirt, and I hang it back up in my house. That's it. That's all I do. Same thing with potatoes. Please don't wash your potatoes when you harvest them. You're going to harvest them, you're going to cure them, you're going to brush off the big clumps of dirt, and you're going to dry them just like that. Don't wash your root products when you're going to cure them. If you're going to store them, if you're going to store your carrots, it's the same thing. You're just going to layer them in your sand, you're going to layer them in your bedding, whatever you have, and you're going to layer them, but keep the dirt on them. Don't wash anything. Okay, next one. Okay. Dehydrate or freeze dry. Okay, so many dry goods need to be stored appropriately in order to keep them long storage. Store goods with an oxygen absorber and container which can be sealed. Here's the deal. This is not intentional living. This is convenience living, okay, which we need sometimes, right? Your yield is big. You need to jump in. You need to use a dehydrator. You need to use a freeze dryer, whatever the case is. But here's the problem is that, again, if you swing off grid, these don't work for you. Regardless. But if you're going to do this, you're going to freeze dry for long-term storage, but don't bother freeze drying herbs. It's just a waste of time. It does maintain a little bit more of the nutrients in the product itself, which is great. So if you're going to do medicinal herbs and you want to freeze dry them, amen, go for it. That's going to be better for you than even drying them. If you're going to dry apples, Justin doesn't like the foamy taste of the apples, so he prefers dehydrated apples. So then on top of that, that's where we're at, okay? So learn to pick what you're going to do. Again, I have a freeze dryer. I don't use it. I use everything else. So, but if you really feel that you're going to invest in a freeze dryer, please make that a conscious effort to move forward. That investment is big. You could have bought a used tractor for that. I'm going to tell you. Okay, so go forward one more time. Okay, so I don't know why my photos didn't pop up. I'm sorry. So the way to store it, it's going to be vacuum seal it, mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, and these goods will last anywhere from 4 months to 1 year. That is enough dehydrator. Freeze dryers, of course, will last 5, 10, 20, and even 25 years on certain items. Okay, Jess? Okay, cold storage. I think we're almost done right here. Cold storing fresh dried foods. Let's move forward really quick. I don't know what my time is. Go ahead. Okay, we're going to blow through this, okay, real quick, you guys. Okay, again, I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay, select foods which store best long term. Here's the problem. We want to grow so much stuff and we want to keep it all the time, but we can't figure out why we're not able to do that. It will wilt in a couple of months, or it wilts in less than a week, right? You're not, and the reason why is you're not doing it right. In short, you're just not doing it right, okay? So when you go to store something cold, you got to make sure the temperature of your space. Does everybody know what a CoolBot unit is? Right? You're building a refrigerator unit in your home. So that's what we're going to do. We're building a CoolBot unit. So basically, it's a CoolBot. It regulates the temperature. You put an air conditioning in. You frame it up. You prevent the cool from evaporating. You walk in. You can hang your pig in there. You can hang your deer in there. You can hang your beef in there. But you can also store it with your unit. Is that efficient to living an off-grid situation? Absolutely not. Okay? But it works really well right now. So basically, humidity levels are essential. Not everything stores properly at the same time. So here's something else, okay? If you are going to plant squash, winter squash, you know that Blue Hubbard, right, that big blue, gray, beautiful squash, that will keep almost 9 months. You can still roast it. You can make it into soup. You can do whatever you want to do with it. I like to mash it up into a mush and add it on a baguette, right? And eat it like that. That is really good, and it's given my family all the nutrients. So if you know that's going to store longer, outside of all this, you should be planting winter squash. So on top of that, the humidity level for where you store things is essential to how long it's going to keep. There was an argument at another conference that you can't store canned goods with fresh produce because the humidity level is different. I beg to differ. Your great-great-grandma stored her canned goods with her squash and her winter storage and all that stuff, and guess what? She still ate from it. You got to be smarter than the bear, though. Is that a saying? Smarter than the average person? What's the saying on that? Smarter than the average bear. Okay, so I speak a dual language. I speak Thai and English, and sometimes it crosses over in my head, okay? So what I'm saying, you could tell I'm a very straight shooter. I don't even care. But anyways, the point of it is that if you are storing like that, you do not want to store the metal rings on your jars, right? Because what happens? It corrodes on there. So just be smart. Take off the metal rings, right? And then your humidity level isn't going to affect your jars because you took off the ring. It's going to be fine, right? Because if you leave it on, it's going to rust, and then you're going to have a heck of a time trying to remove it. So knowing the humidity level is essential. Inventory, intentional living. You need to inventory. I'm going to trip over this now. You're going to need to inventory your goods every week. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. So let me give you how we do it. I do a menu plan on Sunday. I bake my bread on Sunday, okay, for the week. I create a menu plan. I go down into my basement. I grab all my canned goods, all my things that I'm going to make, and I bring it up to my refrigerator upstairs. So I have intentionally went into my larder every week with a meal plan to use the food that I grew so there is hardly any waste, okay? If you are not doing that, you need to start. Your great-grandma did that. She knew what she was going to cook every week and pulled it forward to be able to make sure that there was no waste. Do you get it? Meal planning is essential. Okay, use the softest foods immediately and discard rotted items. Your rotted items will cause everything else to rot. Okay, so if you find in your little bin of apples that there's a rot in there, pull that apple immediately because it will cause everything else to rot. Okay. Fall storing items, winter squash and pumpkins. The thickest skin is the best. I know that you guys love growing sugar pumpkins. I love growing sugar pumpkins as well. But in truth, the only way to keep a sugar pumpkin is to can it. Okay, so when I can pumpkin, I can it with the intention that I'm going to use it for, number one, a pie or a muffin, or I'm going to give it to my dogs when they have diarrhea or are constipated. Okay, so I do can pumpkin because it's a sugar pumpkin, but I know that if I don't can it, I need to use that immediately. And honestly, by the end of November, nobody wants pumpkin anyways. Okay, so then you're going to go to cabbage, apples and potatoes, onions, garlic, carrots, and then beets. Okay, so with that said, you need to, I keep using the word intentional, you guys, to live this life and to move forward and to really be free of where we're at. And if you're not intentional with it, you're running back, you're just moving backwards all the time. You're chasing your own self of doing this and can't figure out why, okay? So next slide. Best way to store carrots, you're gonna store it in sand, sawdust, or soil, okay? They will keep for up to 9 months for you if you do it properly. Some people will go in and water it after a couple of weeks because that keeps it moist. It's kind of like watering your carrots. When you pull it out at the 9-month mark, it's already grown more roots. Did you know that? It grows more roots, but it's okay. Peel the dang carrot. And then you got a carrot. It's not pretty, but it is edible, okay? Potatoes, you're gonna cure it and you're just gonna store it. Please keep the dirt on it. Just brush it off. And then from there, garlic, you all know how to store garlic, right? Do not bundle it tightly because it will mold. Give it that airspace to grow it. Braid it, hang it up, or just tie it with a twine and hang it up from there. Harvest from the bottom up, and then you're good to go. Your beets are going to store in sand, sawdust, or soil. I do love my pickled beets, so I do a lot of preserving on that. You can actually hot water bath can that, or you can pressure can the whole beet yourself. But beets, that's the best way to store it. Onions, just hang it. Do not take the dirt off of it. Do not remove the outer layer. Hang it once it's dry, tie it up, and just hang it. Okay, And then all your root vegetables unwashed, cured, or packed in bedding to ensure cured vegetables with proper airflow. That's the deal. So if you have a row of carrots, you're going to place it, space, place it, space, place it, space. Okay? Same thing for anything else you're going to store in that way. Okay, next. Okay. So a root cellar, a cold storage, or a spring box in a creek. We have a spring box on our property. I didn't even know what a spring box was. I was like, what is this little thing here? This is crazy. This is kind of cool. And then I was talking to somebody else, an older person in our town, and he was like, spring boxes are a common thing around here. And I'm like, well, tell me what a spring box is. They were storing milk in a spring box. So basically they had this big hole in the ground that was like more like a concrete or rock or whatever. They dug deep where that spring was, and that water flowed in there. They would take that water for their livestock as well, or they would put their milk in there and just for the day as they milked, and they would pull it out as they needed it to go. So do I use that? No, not yet. Okay, I don't use it yet because it still flowed up with sand on that one. But spring boxes are great if you're going to store anything in it. So if you have a spring box on your property, you are really blessed. Truly, truly, truly blessed, okay? The average humidity level is roughly 80 to 90% on that. So you should get a humidity thing to hang wherever you're going to store your goods to make sure. If it happens to go above and below that, then you might want to move your goods. Okay. Then from there, the proper airflow is essential to prevent items from going bad. Do not store fruits which continue to ripen near foods which have been cured. For example, apples should never be stored near squash. Okay. So if you're going to store it, you're going to store it separately, and then you're going to move on from there. Next. Curing meats for fish long term. Go ahead. This one's going to be a little hard. Fish is easy for a lot of people. Meats is not, because we were told that you could probably get really sick on it, so we're not going to do it. Okay. But in Washington State, the Native Americans still stored fish and still stored deer and moose that way, okay? So we're going to go precautionary tips for that. Ensure your space and tools are very sanitized, first of all. Most of us have this sanitized in their dishwasher, right? So you're going to run it through. Same thing, like my milk buckets are dishwashed that way as well, too. Okay, meat must be cured properly to ensure parasites present in the meat, especially game, are removed, okay? So that's when, if you're going to leave it in the sun, you got to really manage that time of can you dry it in that sense, okay? So using caution during the butchering process to ensure that the meat is not contaminated. So whoever's processing your own meat, you know that it's essential that you're doing it in a very clean space and environment, right? So if you're processing chickens, it's the same way. It's keeping it cool once you've dispatched it, things like that. So the flow of follow curing recipes to ensure the proper amount of curing salt is used. You can go, there's a bunch of great websites out there that if you put curing pig, for example, they'll pull it up. The salt to meat ratio has got to be followed in order to cure it properly, okay? So when you do that, all right, you're stepping into a new realm, okay? You can make prosciutto, right? You're going to hang it in your kitchen. That beautiful cottage kitchen in Europe that has the prosciutto hanging up there, and it's really great and beautiful. I've never done prosciutto, but guess what? I got my own hogs coming up now, so I'm going to have that beautiful leg just hanging right there, and it's going to be like sexy and ready to go and stuff. And with my luck, my first one will mold, so the next one, I'll have to figure out how to do it properly. So basically, do not rush the curing process. Moisture left within the meat will cause spoilage. We've done bacon ourselves, okay? So we've done bacon. So when you do bacon, you know that you've got to get that meat cured properly with the salt ratio. You got to dry it out, and then you can pack on your maple syrup or your brown sugar or whatever you want to do, and you're going to dry it the rest of the way after that, right? The first time I did it, my salt ratio was, and I was like, that doesn't look right. And so I tossed it. And then we did ham, right? We've done, for St. Patrick's Day, we've done brisket. We cure our own brisket, okay? So when you do that, you're taking all your nitrates out, because your nitrates aren't good for you. They give you migraines. They increase your blood sugar to increase and stuff like that. So we're removing the nitrates, and we're curing it in an old-fashioned way so we can consume it. You can buy pink salt anywhere now, right? You can buy your pink salt. You can cure it. But if you would start with your ham, your brisket, your smoke. These are the easiest. You can control this easily. Then you're going to go to smoked sausage. Whoever's done that. We make our own rabbit sausage. We put it in a smoker, and it's absolutely fabulous, okay? Duck breast pancetta. Who's ever made that? Anybody? If you raise ducks for meat, you're going to take that duck breast, you're going to put salt on it, you're going to wrap it up, and you're just going to hang it up to cure. Duck breast pancetta is, you feel less guilty for the waste because it's smaller, right? And so if you're going to start that way, that's great. You're going to slice it really thin, and you're going to put it on a little baguette of sourdough and homemade cream cheese. Fabulous. Fabulous. Great way to do it. So if you have a duck that needs to be processed, even if it's old, really good for that. Okay, then you're going to do your smoked fish. We used to smoke fish all the time in Seattle. Justin would fish, and we take it home and we smoke it ourselves. Jerky, dried, and things like that, that's good. So here's the deal. I know there's a lot of hunters around here, right? So when you're hunting and you're smoking your own, you're making jerky and stuff like that, sometimes if you over-dry it, it's crispy or it's not. Okay, let's go forward. Boy, this boo on the monitor. Okay, so advanced level, you're going to do your own salami, pepper, prosciutto, coppa, and pancetta, right? Pork is one of the scariest things for people to cure, in truth. Really scary because the bacteria in pork is really high, really high. Okay, go forward. Okay, let's talk about nitrates, okay? So you have nitrates that are found in many food items, right? So if you go to the grocery store, most of your bacon is nitrated, right? Your ham has nitrates on it, and a lot of your deli meat. Nitrates actually hold the color of the food, and people don't want to buy food that looks brown, even though it's good, so they put nitrates in it to preserve that, and they sell it to you. But nitrates are the most unhealthiest things that you can consume, okay? And the reason why I know that is that nitrates, with my autoimmunes, causes inflammation and major headaches, okay? So nitrates can be found in, it's nitrates and nitrites. This is pink salt, but there are natural nitrates as well too. Celery powder is a natural nitrate. So there's a pepperoni in Costco. They use a nitrate, but it's celery powder. I grow a lot of celery for that reason, okay? And also canned celery, but you're not supposed to can celery if the National Center for Food Preservation tells you that, but you're not supposed to do that. But you can celery, and the reason why they tell you can't can celery is because they never tested it yet, so they're just going to tell you not to do it. Don't can it in like tiny strips. Can it in 1-inch strips. Put in water in it. Don't overpack your jar. It holds the consistency fine. So what do I do with canned celery? I add it to soup at the end of my cooking time. I will turn around and use it for just like, I'll cut it smaller for my sandwiches. Right? So that's a great way to can it because it's so waterlogged, it doesn't preserve well any other way. So just don't pack your jar, 1-inch cuts, okay? National Center for Food Preservation is The preserving agents which help to store foods long-term, preserves fats from going rancid, minimizes the risk of botulism, also used to maintain the color of meats and add flavor. It adds flavor. Do you know what that means? That they are taking it and giving more flavor in the ham that you're buying at the market that's not necessary because you're going to eat it anyways. Eliminate nitrates is just as essential as eliminating a lot of the other crap that they're trying to put into your system. If you can buy a nitrate-free item, that's great. I'm at the point where I cannot cure anything yet because we don't have our own hogs yet, right? Once we have our own hogs, this is a game changer for that point. I would buy a hog from a friend and I would do as much as I can, but now that we're raising our own hogs, that's different. You could do it nitrate-free. That's basically, I have 3 minutes, go. Okay, so basically, let's talk eggs because I get hit with a lot of eggs real quick. You can freeze eggs up to 1 year, okay? You can go ahead and batter them up, put them in there, freeze them for 1 year. You can water glass eggs. I love you people because you are using my article on Backyard Poultry to go ahead and water glass your eggs. But there's a lot of things wrong with water glassing your eggs and why people are making mistakes. You can only water glass your eggs if it has nothing on it. No dirt, no blood, no poop, no nothing on it. Some hens will lay an egg and it's just so big it causes them just to bleed a little bit. That cannot be on your egg, okay? That egg has to look like it is super clean and the bloom is dried and that's it, which means that you got to run to your coop real quick. You're going to harvest your eggs and you're going to look at them and you run back home and you're going to put them in your water glass jar. I have seen people put eggs on their counters for 2 weeks and go, I'm going to water glass them. Guess what you do not do? You do not do that. You use the freshest eggs possible to water glass your eggs because you're going to keep them long term. Stop storing your water glass eggs in 5-gallon buckets, period. Because you got to reach the bottom of that 5-gallon bucket to get your oldest egg, and guess what happens? If it's 8 months down the road, your eggs are thin. They're going to crack. That contaminates your whole entire bucket. Water glass your eggs in 2-gallon buckets. Stop storing them in jars, okay? Because the same thing. How are you going to reach your hand into a 1-gallon jar to get the bottom of that egg to pull out first, okay? Food grade 2-gallon buckets are your best bet, okay? The jars are beautiful. I agree. I think it's a beautiful picture. I run social media. I get it, but it doesn't make any sense. 2-gallon buckets to water glass. This will keep up to 18 months, but the product of your egg is runny. You cannot use it to just fry up an egg. It becomes a baked egg baking product at that point. You're adding it to your baked goods. So keep that in mind. So when you get to that 18-month mark, right, you got to use it for baked goods, okay? It's nothing you can fry. Scrambled eggs, I should say that as well too. Dehydrate between 5 to 10 years. If you do it properly, freeze dry, you can store up to 25 years, salt curing in fine sea salt and store in a refrigerator. Okay, so if you have, and you want to experiment first, and you're scared to do it, it is okay. Take pancetta, right, from your duck, or you're not all of you guys raise that, but if you take that and you salt cure it and you're too afraid, you can go ahead and put it somewhere else. But if you're not salt curing eggs, I'm going to tell you need to. You salt cure an egg yolk, right? You're going to just separate the whites from the yolk. You're going to put it in fine sea salt. You're going to layer it, this beautiful little pitcher, and that's what my pitcher was on the other one. But you're going to layer it. Once it dries, it turns hard. You're going to take that hard egg, and you're going to grate it over pasta, grate it over greens, grate it over anything. It's like Parmesan cheese in a healthier form, because you're not making your own Parmesan cheese yet, I'm assuming, right? So the salt curing eggs is incredible. Please do store them in the refrigerator, though, and pull them out as you need them, okay? If you're not doing it and you raise chickens, you guys are missing out. Just do this. Just do this, okay? Pickled items, brine, store in the refrigerator. I'm going to tell you right now, stop making 60 jars of pickles. Stop making 90 jars of pickles. Stop making 100 jars of pickles. If you're not eating pickles every day and finishing a jar, your pickles are going to get wet. Why? Because pickles contain a lot of water, and then from there, they get waterlogged, and everybody's like, my pickles suck because they're really wet. Well, pickles are wet. So now you can 60 jars of pickles. You only ate 30 of those jars. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to have to use those other jars, right? Make relish. Make fried pickles. I love fried pickles. Do something to use them up, but you got to use them, right? Or else it's waste. If you have hogs, you can feed them to your hogs, but intentional living means that I know that my family's going to eat only 10 cans of pickles in a 1-year time frame. I'm only going to can 1-year pickles, which means I only need to plant 3 pickling cucumber plants to get to that, which means then I have room to grow green beans on my pole vine, which my families will eat frozen for stir fry and things like that, and soups and stuff. If you're going to can 60 jars of green beans, let me be honest with you, you can use them. Drain the water out of it. Get a cookie sheet. Put the canned green beans on a cookie sheet and freeze them. Make your soup, right? And then add them last to your soup, and then that's going to allow you to use them properly after that. So there are ways to do it. It's one extra step, but that prevents you from going, gosh, I'm not going to eat these green beans. Does that make sense? Okay, next. We're running out of time. Okay, ham, canning, large storage, high and low acidic items, go. I hate canning, but I can. Let's be honest, okay? So jams, jellies, pickles, everybody's comfortable with that. Chutneys, barbecue sauce, and stuff like that. I have to make barbecue sauces that are nitrate-free, right? So I make things like peach barbecue. I make cherry barbecue. Tomatoes really flare me up, so I do use a lot of tomato products, but my barbecue sauce is made out of fruit, basically, is what I do, okay? So tomato products, grow the right tomatoes. Use the right product. Be very intentional for that. Tools for hot water bath or a steam canner. Who knows what a steam canner is? Great. A steam canner cans your food, and anybody wants to fight me on this, it was approved on 2015 by the USDA, okay, as a safe canning tool. Steam canner cans your food with only 2 inches of water. Basically, it's canning it with steam. That eliminates a lot of the heat in your kitchen. So steam is hotter than boiling water, right? Okay, so you're going to use a steam canner, you're going to can your foods like that, and it's going to be fine. High acidic foods, okay? High acidic foods. Then you can go and then, I hate cottage laws. I hate telling people to tell me what I can and cannot sell, okay? But luckily, Tennessee did open their cottage laws for fermented goods. You can sell now kombucha and fermented beverages, and you can sell kraut as well, too, okay? And then now we're going to go to, where did we go? Okay, we're good. Now we're here. Low acidic foods have got to be canned. Stop rebel canning. Stop. I'm going to tell you now. Stop doing what your grandma did. Stop. Science meets tradition for a reason, okay? I hate it when someone tells me I haven't died yet. I haven't gotten burned. Guess what happened on Memorial Day? 3rd-degree burns. It didn't happen to me yet, but it did, right? So now stop. Meet science with traditional and do it right. God knows that you will be covered, but botulism is very tricky. Botulism comes and hits you in the case of a flu. Before you knew it, you're thinking you're not feeling good, you're sweating, and you have flu-like symptoms. So most people are like, oh, I just must be sick, right? Botulism has no smell. It has no taste, okay? It will hit you, and it will hit you hard. The cases of botulism happening are so low. But again, why do you need it? If you are educated in your science and then you have this, good God, just use it. Don't bypass it because your grandma did. Don't do it. It's not worth it, okay? That's why canning isn't my favorite thing, okay? Next. Okay, you can't even see this picture. So I also use a steam juicer, and I also use a steam canner. A steam juicer actually extracts all the juice from apples and fruit, and then I can can it, or I can take that clear liquid and make jelly right after that. I don't have to hang my fruit. I don't have to do anything hard. It's very easy. We talked about the steam canner. I'm out of time, so we're going to keep going. Okay, so how many more slides do we have? Okay, so do I really need to go over the canning process for you guys? No? Okay, if you want to take your pictures, let me get out of the way, and you guys can take a picture of that real quick. So blanching. Oh, let me talk about blanching. Please blanch your fruits and vegetables if you're going to can them because it keeps the color and the flavor in it a lot better. Don't bypass that. Okay, go on. Freezing fruits and vegetables and meats, basically the same thing. If you're going to do it, blanch it. It slows down the enzyme process, which will allow your foods to keep longer. Next. Okay, there it is right there. So maybe my talk on the government really bypassed my talk to you guys. Sorry. Keep going on that one. Okay, so this is just this. Basically, this is where you can find me. This is my book if you want to pick it up. Actually, I have books here if you guys want to pick it. McMurray Hatchery was graceful enough to buy my books and bring them here. If you guys want to grab one, we can meet you right outside the tent, and you can grab it. It's $20. I don't know how they're accepting payment. Cash only. There you go. Cash only with her, but I think you can go to the tent, and you can buy it with a debit card or whatever the case is. The book will guide you on your journey, and that is it. Don't trust your government. Don't trust your government.